to this special legislative meeting. Madam Clerk?
Tucker Whitman,
Here.
Ben Vitale,
Present.
Mark Farrell,
Present.
Paul Pinkney,
Here.
Joseph Runkel,
Present.
Keith Batman,
Here.
Hans Putcher's excused, Terry Baxter,
Aye.
Joseph Bennett,
Here.
Frank Reginelli,
Here.
Patrick Mahonik,
Here.
Timothy Lattimore is excused, Michael Didio,
Here.
Ryan Foley,
Here.
Michael Chapman.
Here. Would you please stand for the pledge of allegiance and remain standing for a moment of prayer? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Just a couple of housekeeping items this evening. We're gonna be talking about judicial public safety, public works, and the Health and Human Services Department. And anything that we vote on, we'll just automatically have a roll call vote, and that'll keep things a little clearer for everybody who's gotta keep track of the votes and whatnot. That being out of the way, what I sent to each of you in email and have since provided in hard copy at your seat is the recommendations that I had. Those were just to start conversations. Mr. Batman?
Before we begin with specific deliberations, might I suggest that we, in terms of these deliberations, that we take sufficient money out of the planned draw on fund balance, put it in the tax levy to equal 1.25%, so that we can see where we are in terms of the draw on the fund balance if we stay within our tax cap. We don't have to, I'm not suggesting the tax cap be established at 1.25%, but rather that in our deliberations, it would be very helpful if we understand what the draw on the fund balance will be.
Okay.
If we stay at 1.25%.
I think we'll have those numbers. It's my understanding at this point, Lynn, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're $174,000 away from reaching the tax cap
No,
levy.
you don't understand my suggestion,
No,
sir.
but it would be the 174 if you subtracted from 1.3.
So you're gonna close.
I would like the 174,000 taken out of the 1.3, so that our tax cap is 1.25, so that when we say, how are we doing, the answer will be, the draw on the fund balance is 1.2 million, 1 million, 1.5 million, or whatever. Because there are two things here. One, of course, is the tax levy, but importantly is the draw on the fund balance. And it's hard to deal with both numbers.
I mean, we can tell you that, but I think you need to make a motion to do that.
I would move that then.
I'll second.
Mr. Foley seconds. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 4 of us opposed. Just gonna add to the confusion. We know where we are.
What?
Thank you.
The other thing, man,
Excuse me?
a procedural suggestion, I don't see how we're gonna get through everything tonight in less than 1.5 to 2 days. And I'm wondering if, to begin, we can establish a time at which we will stop and make a decision about whether we should continue or whether we should to end for the night and have a separate meeting. It just seems to me that it's, given all of the stuff we have to do tonight, if we get to 9:30, 10 o'clock, and we're trying to make decisions of this import, everyone's gonna be tired, perhaps irritable, and it's gonna be hard to make good decisions. I would leave it to you to determine.
I'd make a suggestion
when we
that
should
if the
stop.
hour does become late, then we consider an adjournment at that time. But let's see how we can move along. I think a lot of these things are fairly straightforward unless they're
That's fine.
spoken about at great length. We should be able to move along. I think there's some departments here that there's no changes to be made, so. Mark, did you have your hand up?
Well, I'm all for moving things along, but as long as we're kind of finding out where we are. We did kind of, the latest sales tax report has us down 0.89 compared to last year. Next year, we're budgeting for about a 2.49, which is about $547,000 in revenue. the comptroller is kind of warning everybody to go with a 1%. Either way, I think 2.49 is being pretty optimistic. I think that in order to get the numbers exact, we probably should adjust that line on revenue and see where we are with that adjustment.
To make a motion, and where would you like to adjust it to?
Well, I'd like to make the motion, but I think the discussion has to be on where we go. Instead of the 2.49, if we go down to a 1% projection, that's gonna leave us with a 331,000 gap in revenue on sales tax. But somewhere between that 1% and that 2.49, I just think we need to be a little bit more realistic. I guess I would make the motion to bring it down to the 1.
There's a motion by Mr. Farrell to reduce the sales tax line to 1% for next year's budget. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, got a couple seconds back there. Any discussion on this? Mr. Runkle?
Suzanne, you established this 2.5% based on a 5-year, 4 or 5
It was
year.
actually 6, but yeah, it was looking out at the historical, an average of the historical increase. There was in there one year, 2009, where it was down a couple percent, and there was another year when it was off by 0.12%. The revenues right now are down from last year, and we have lost a couple of stores out here that's small, and there's things that have changed since that was done.
Okay.
It's up to the comfort level of the legislature.
Fine.
Mr. Foley?
So I just wanna make sure, are we adding the additional amount that we are now subtracting, going down to 1% as a draw on fund balance? Is that what we were doing basically?
Yes.
And if so, then what does that bring, what would that bring the total draw on fund balance up to? Then if we have that figure.
1.7.
It's $1,209,000. You can make no other changes. We just switched that savings that we already found. It would be the drawing fund balance is $1,209,032.
That assumes the tax levy will be 1.25.
Okay, great.
And that's with a 1%?
No.
No.
What
You have
would
to
it
add
be?
in a half
Well,
a million.
you have to, so I gotta figure that out, what the proposed cut would be, right? It's the only one who,
So what you're proposing is a 1% increase over last year's sales tax levy.
Well, I would propose it, but it's like you said, we're down almost 1% over last year. We projected that we would be 1% ahead of last year. So for this year that we're in right now, we're kind of behind. So if we speculate a 1% over what we budgeted, I think we're still gonna be high, but I could live with that much higher rather than a 2.49.
Right, I was just trying to clarify.
Anyone else?
so it's $346,806. Is the reduction, which proposed.
That brings us up to roughly 1.5, 1.6.
1.55. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on Mr. Farrell's motion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry, we're gonna do a roll call vote. Forgot already. Madam Clerk?
Yeah. Tucker Whitman,
Yes.
Ben Vitale,
Yes.
Mark Farrell,
Yes.
Paul Pickney,
Yes.
Joseph Runkle,
Yes.
Keith Batman,
Yes.
Hans Petrus excused, Terry Baxter,
Yes.
Frank Reginelli,
Yes.
Patrick Mahonik,
Yes.
Timothy Lattimore is excused, Michael Didio,
Yes.
Ryan Foley,
Yes.
Michael Chapman.
Yes, I think Mr. Bennett would like to vote.
Did I miss Mr. Bennett? Mr. Bennett, I'm sorry.
Yes. That was 4 years ago.
Come on, Joe, don't rub it in now. Did that pass?
Yes.
Very good, thank you. All right, well, I'm gonna request that we go to some of these departments, and we can start with buildings and grounds. I would just offer, I observed and reviewed this, that there were a number of dollars removed from various maintenance accounts. Some of them stuck out, such as elevators, some of them were on particular buildings, and that's troubling to me if we're going to position ourselves for next year. And it seems to me that we're asking Mr. Duckett to bring his magic act unless we provide the funding for him. So in the meantime, the cleaning services contract has been reduced by the sum of $103,370. So based on that, I would ask that $100,000 be placed back into the buildings and grounds budget to cover those areas of maintenance and needed repairs. And I would make a motion to that effect.
Second.
There a second?
Tucker.
Tucker.
Several seconds, thank you. Any discussion? Mr. Runkle?
The $103,000 deduction is not in the budget we're looking at, correct?
I didn't do it.
That's fine, okay. All right.
Mr. Farrell?
I just ask Gary to, I mean, that's one of the things that I see. Our elevator cost year to year, $12,000 per building and whatnot. I'm just curious, what, is that annual maintenance? Is that,
It's a combination of the annual maintenance agreement, combined with, some of the stuff is not covered by the annual maintenance agreement, so it gives us money to pay for some of the parts that are not covered. So, yeah, it's a combination of those two.
and we generally utilize those kind of funds on a year-to-year basis? I think,
Actually, what do you want me to continue?
please.
Yeah, last year I was able to negotiate with a vendor and we got reduced rates, that's why this year we're in better shape than we were last year. And I anticipate, I've got a preliminary report from them, that the rates are gonna be the same as what I negotiated last year. So I think we'll be okay with those rates unless we have a catastrophic elevator failure, which could happen to the historic post office. And not that it's catastrophic like somebody falling, but where we have to replace the elevator.
Hypothetical, if the county did a capital improvement, we're able to do something about these systems, what would we be able to do to these annual costs?
If we were able to do something about the system,
Replace the systems.
you still have to have maintenance agreement on any elevator. So I don't know that you would reduce the cost significantly. My experience so far with new construction, it seems like when you bring something in to repair something, with new construction after soft warranty, it's worse than the old one, to be honest with you. We are looking at replacing some of the door controllers on these elevators out here with some money we've got left over this year. If we have enough money to do it, that would reduce a lot of the failures that you've seen out here.
Mr. Duckett, you could use the $100,000 in your account to take care of a lot of repairs and upkeep that is occurring.
Yes, to be honest, the current budget, the way it's set up, does not have anything for capital improvements or sweeping corrections to our buildings. Sooner or later, if you don't put something aside for that, it'll be just like the roads, you're gonna have to pay the piper someday. So that's what, I would look at that $103,000, if it stayed in there, be something we could come back to the legislature with proposals for specific things that we see that are heading for a problem, and we could maybe cut it off at the path.
Mr. Patman?
Clarification, your motion is to put $103,000 into the budget, correct?
Mhm.
My understanding is the 103 has not been taken out of the budget. Is that correct? Did you say you hadn't adjusted the budget based upon the savings?
Oh, and that was, if that was in, not on the cleaning, no, if this is the cleaning reduction.
That is.
no,
It's
it was
just a
not.
transfer.
Because these are more recent numbers, if I'm,
Wait, is the 103 in the budget or no? As it stands now?
The reduction is not taken out of the budget, so that money is in the
Okay,
budget.
so there's 103,000 in the budget right now. We don't have to put it back in.
Correct.
you have $103,000 extra unless we take it.
In the cleaning area, yeah.
Right, so what you're suggesting is not to put money in from a savings, but rather to add 103,000.
What I intended to, sir, is to maintain that $103,000 in the buildings and grounds budget,
It's in there.
but not for, right now, you're looking at it as cleaning service.
So your suggestion is to move it from cleaning to maintenance? It's a move, it's not an addition. I'm sorry, I'm not being difficult, I just don't understand. She's saying it's in the budget. You're saying we need to increase the budget. And it's a
But-
different thing.
Mr. Batman, thank you for pointing that out. I'll back up. Again, I'll say, what I wanna do with this motion is to maintain the $103,000 in the buildings and grounds budget. If it needs to simply be moved so it can be utilized in the maintenance or some capital area, then that's what I would like to see done. I'm not saying add another $103,000.
Okay. Thank you, that's what wasn't clear.
Mr. Foley?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, and Gary, actually, Gary, can you do something with, other than, can you still maintain your, some projects that you wanna improve upon, with, let's say, $50,000, $100,000, was saved, it looks like through an efficiency or whatever, and that's great, that's what we are looking for. But then we're not actually saving it, we just give it back to you. So let's just say 50,000, could you, possibly utilize that, and make that stretch a little bit?
My point is, and I understand where Mike's coming from with this, we can spend as little or as much as you choose to spend to maintain our buildings. If we don't choose to maintain our buildings, sooner or later, we're gonna have to pay the price. Because sooner or later, a window's gonna fall out of this building, or something's gonna happen. So really, they're just like the roads, but they're not as obvious, because you're not bouncing over. The buildings need to be maintained. There's a very old, air conditioning equipment over at the HBO, that could fail sometime. When's it gonna fail, I don't know, it might go another 2 years, it might fail when we try to bring it up in the spring. So those are the types of things that, you need capital money in order to fix those things. So however much you choose to spend, it will be, make this legislature look bad, but the future legislature will appreciate it, because they're not gonna get that in the butt.
Do you, okay.
Simple as that. It's
Do
just like
you-
your home, you have to pay, you have to maintain your
Right,
rent.
I understand that, but do you anticipate spending a full $100,000 on these repairs?
If the legislature wills that allows me to spend that kind of money, I would absolutely spend the money, yes.
Mr. Maloney?
I mean, I would offer the suggestion that this is a no-brainer. We could spend millions of dollars on our buildings. So $100,000 that was already budgeted, to just maintain it, to say, yes, go and fix what we have and take care of what, our infrastructure, is a no-brainer to me. I would say we need to look at the windfall money that we've had coming in and say, let's establish those capital improvement accounts where we can say, there's this much money in addition, instead of dropping it in the fund balance and then drawing out of that in the future.
Anyone else?
Have a roll call vote, please.
We shall. Madam Clerk?
Could the clerk read the motion?
Pardon me?
Could you read the motion, Madam Clerk?
Okay, do you want it to put the 103, it's already in the budget?
It's in the budget, but to maintain it in the buildings and grounds budget.
Okay, to take $103,370, and put it in the buildings budget to maintain buildings. It's in the cleaning line right now.
Can I clarify this, Gary, the question? Is that 103 spread out throughout all the buildings?
Yes.
Do you
Well,
want-
all the buildings would have cleaning service.
Yes. So do you wanna keep, you can give me the figures to say how much goes to each building, and we'll keep it in that building's maintenance, or you just wanna use it, move it to this building? What do you
Well,
wanna do?
if we leave it in the budget, I would come back to the legislature for approval for whatever project of that size that we were gonna be doing anyway, so we can move it
So
around.
we'll leave it in the same buildings that they're currently in?
It can stay there, yes,
Okay,
it could.
that's fine, so that's.
Okay.
All set?
Yep.
Okay. Tucker Whitman?
Yes.
Ben Vitale,
Yeah.
Mark Farrell,
No.
Paul Pickney,
Yes.
Joseph Runkel,
Yes.
Keith Batman,
No.
Hans Petrus excused, Terry Baxter,
Aye.
Joseph Bennett,
Yes.
Frank Reginelli,
Yes.
Patrick Mahonik,
Yes.
Timothy Latimer is excused, Michael Didio,
Yes.
Ryan Foley,
No.
Michael Chapman.
Yes,
Pass.
that has passed. Okay. Does anyone have any other areas within the Buildings and Grounds Department? Mr. Runkle?
No, this is the Parks Department, but should be the same.
One and the same.
Let's hit that one.
Tell us where you're at.
Page 189, Emerson Park, contractual area.
I got 189, Joe. Where, what?
Page 180, it's down near the bottom, its abbreviation is PAVE Electric,
Okay, gotcha.
and, again, Gary, what is that?
Pavilion electric. We pay for the electric for the pavilion out of that, and then we're reimbursed by the ACJ.
100% reimbursement, you're saying 100% reimbursement, so it's a wall, okay, fine. I was just looking at what last year, or 2014's actual was versus, the 2015 adopted, and fine. So if it's a wash, it's a wash, and I don't care. Thank you.
Mr. Farrell?
Gary, back on 177, your buildings, two items. I'm looking at the vacation buyout of 10,250. Is that contractual?
Well, no, what that is, I actually questioned that myself, because that was put in, it was based on a 2014, when we had two people leave. And what happens is when somebody leaves, depending on when they actually leave, then they end up paying for their vacation. Now, at this point, I don't have anybody scheduled to go out as of today, but I've got two people that could retire, but they both told me they're not planning on retiring, so I don't know what to tell you as far as including something in there. You can take it out, and then if people retire and we need it, we'll have to get it back. I had talked to Lynn about cutting it in half, because I don't anticipate it being that much more than that.
Before I motion on that one, just down below that, we got equipment trackable. It looks like a $34,000. Same page.
Is that a vehicle for buildings and grounds?
Yes, I'm drawing a blank. That's to replace, we have two vehicles out at the jail that we use for, well, one that we use for plowing, and we use a loader from the highway department. So the plow truck is a 2004 Ford F-350. Become quite costly to maintain. It's an installed truck. It's in fairly rough shape. So we were looking at upgrading out there. The other vehicle we're using, that was a hand-me-down from the sheriff's department. The other vehicle we were using, I had to look up the date, but it's one of the, it was previously a vehicle that you used to transport the inmates around for the work crew, and it was worn out for long range, we use it for around town service. So I'd like to upgrade one of those two trucks. And I'd like to get it to be a plow truck, so they're gonna change it actually.
Mr. Farrell?
Motion to take line item 51008 from 10,250 to 0.
There a second?
Second.
Mr. Bennett seconds. Any discussion? That's the vacation buyout line, moving it back to 0. There's no discussion, we could vote, ladies?
Who seconded that one?
Joe Bennett.
Thank you. Okay, Tucker Whitman,
Yes.
Ben Vitale,
Yes.
Mark Farrell,
Yes.
Paul Pickney,
Yes.
Joseph Runkel,
Yes.
Keith Batman,
Yes.
Hans Petrus excused, Terry Baxter,
Aye.
Joseph Bennett,
Yes.
Frank Reginelli,
Yes.
Pat Mahonik,
Yes.
Timothy Lattimore is excused, Michael Didio,
Yes.
Ryan Foley,
Yes.
Michael Chapman.
Yes.
Passed.
Is that reduced to zero?
Yes.
Mr. Farrell?
Gary, also going over to the Ag Museum, page 190, we also have another line item of equipment track roll at $10,000.
That's, still an interest on it. Oh, okay. What that was is, we were requesting money for the parking lot. For, starting to save, make up a bill up an account to pay the parking lot. Again, that's something that you guys could approve or not approve.
I'm all for these improvements, and the reason why I voted no on the other one is because I think what we need to do is we need to look at our capital improvements across the board. And I don't wanna get off, this is on the budget tonight, but that's why I cast a no vote. I think it needs to be encompassed and prioritized, the buildings, the roads, and the bridges, all at one time. That's what I'm like to see as a goal of the legislator. Motion to reduce line item 52100, $10,000 to zero.
Is there a second? Mr. Bennett seconds that. Any discussion? Mr. Baxter?
I may not understand how the money goes, but is there any reason our highway department wouldn't do that paving and take it out of their budget if they often have money left in the paving account?
Not sure we're gonna get an answer for you.
Our highway guy was here.
He
Mr.
still
Webber?
is.
Yeah, he's over there. He is.
It really should be budgeted for, not in the highway account, seeing that we see quite a bit of reimbursement from CHIPS, which it has to go on our roads for that purpose. The same thing when we budget for the parking lots out back that the money was put in for. Again, they're not in the D fund, they should be in a different fund for that as well.
George, did you have money left this year for the paving?
I have a little bit of money left, and we're scheduling some more paving for next week.
Okay.
Any other discussion? If not, we could vote.
Okay, this is to reduce line 52100 from 10,000 to zero. Okay, yep. Tucker Whitman,
No.
Ben Vitale,
Yes.
Mark Farrell,
Yes.
Paul Pickney,
Yes.
Joseph Runkel,
No.
Keith Batman,
Yes.
Hans Kutcher's excused, Terry Baxter,
No.
Joseph Bennett,
Yes.
Frank Reginelli,
Yes.
Patrick Mahonik,
Yes.
Timothy Lattimore is excused, Michael Didio,
No.
Ryan Foley,
No.
Michael Chapman.
No,
Defeated.
it's defeated. Okay. Anything else within the parks or buildings and grounds area? Gary, do you have anything that you wanna comment on or ask for, or give us a present? Anything?
No, I already, the only presents I had, I actually wrote you those emails about, so, that was it. But you know my position, we kind of share my position on capital improvement for the future, so I appreciate, what we do have.
All right, well, thank you very much. So we can move on to the highway department. The first note that I had, and you'll see on the page, was on page 207. I guess this might be a question for Suzanne. I was looking at the maintenance on the roads and bridges. In 2014, we had over $2 million, and we seem to be going down. Is there a reason we'd be traveling in that direction versus maintaining or increasing?
Just trying to fit within, just trying to come up with a budget, I mean, really. The infrastructure in highway could always use, like everywhere else, could use some work. Are you looking at page 207, right?
Yep.
Looking at page 207, right towards the top there's a highlighted line that says contractual, and you just follow it over. Under maintenance of roads and bridges.
Right. The road's not, it's just $20,000 less, I'm not clear what you're asking.
Yeah, me neither.
Well, it's more than 10,000. I mean, it was over 2 million in 14, that's my question.
It's 2,000, wasn't it?
And now it's down to 1.6.
Right.
So I was just kinda curious, if we're traveling in that direction, and yet we holler that we wanna have, roads and bridges maintained, and we've also been under the gun from New York State to come up with a bridge plan, so I'm just curious, why, is there some other, is it made up somewhere else, or?
Well, this number, you know, that question might be better directed at George, because this is a number that I don't believe I can, so.
Okay, well, in correlation with that, if you drop down on the same page to, the
Right.
paving, line 54099,
You're looking at capital improvements?
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
54099, that paving number there
Right,
has only increased by $500,000.
right. You know, it was all about trying to not hit the fund balance too much and stay on the tax cap.
George, do you have a budget book?
Yes, I do.
Did you follow what I was asking? You got any comments, concerns?
George, I was gonna say that didn't you probably spend a lot more in 14 because you got extra CHIPS funding? And that often when you get more CHIPS, so you go in and increase the budget to spend it?
Yes, and by the looks of it,
Kind of modifying
14
budget.
surface treatment was quite a bit higher than it is subsequently in the
Right.
following years.
Mr. Pinckney, then Mr. Vitale.
George, in one of the meetings, I recall it in a wish list of between 6 and 7 million if we had to do everything. Was that the correct number?
Yes.
So here we are at trying to Band-Aid it with 500,000 on the roads. This is why we're never gonna get caught up. I mean, just balancing, or playing that act of balancing numbers when we have problems, it's not gonna work.
I guess that's my point. I'm trying to, I really wanna see a realistic number if we are going to say we've accomplished anything. Otherwise, this legislature and future legislatures are gonna be in the same position. Mr. Vitale.
I'm real slow, so I'm gonna go back to your first comment on contractual on the top of 207. It's down,
700,000.
yeah, a little over 700,000. And if you look over on machinery rental, 54,093 on the other side, which makes up the total that you're looking at over there. Just that one line item is almost $600,000. So, you know, that difference over there on the total of the contractual was all, you know, just a lot of it was all in one line, and it was machinery rental. And George didn't ask for any more for machinery rental, so I'm thinking if you look back to 2014, we did something different. I wouldn't know for sure, but just that one line is where 600,000 of that money is. So I guess I'm not so concerned as long as George is telling us that he's not gonna have to rent the machines that he rented then. And as for your last comment, only increasing by 500,000, I am sure there is not a single legislator here that would not put $2 million into paving our roads in this county. But we also have a responsibility to create a budget that is, that kind of fits what our resources are. And right now, our resources are not, we don't have a lot of them. And I think increasing by 500,000 right now at this time is probably the appropriate thing. If we get a windfall throughout the year and we want to add to that, then probably we can. But I also think we need to stay within our abilities to and the resources that we have.
Anyone else? Mr. Foley?
Yeah, this question is for George. George, is there any type of plan that you have for that additional 500?
Basically, that 500,000 would be between 5 and 6.5 miles of road, depending on what type of overlay is put onto it. And definitely our needs are a lot higher than the additional 5 miles of road. Normally, right now, we're paving 20, so that would pick us up to 25, 26 miles.
Mr. Babin?
Yes, I want to comment, and then I have a question for George. My comment is I would go back to what Mr. Mahunik said, that what we need to do, and Mr. Farrell as well, what we need to do with all of this is to look at our capital needs. In the case of roads, what we need to do is to look at the road evaluation that's been done and use and approach that as we would any capital plan. How are we going to spend money over the next several years, drawing as needed from fund balance and using some of these windfall amounts to begin to move our roads forward. That requires an analysis and it requires a plan. Just simply putting money in the budget to do more roads will not necessarily get us there. Which brings me to my question. We did pay for and authorize a review, a study of the roads. Has that been done yet? I know the guy was working.
That is in the process of being done right now.
When that's done, that's the point at which we need to look at that and see what we're gonna do to fix our roads. It's gotta be a long-term thing. It can't be a dollar here, a dollar there. My bigger concern here is what we're doing with the fund balance in terms of operations. The baseline amount we've been spending on roads in the last couple of years anyway is $2 million. We've spent that money from operations. That's what we have to do every year, not just to improve our roads, not even to maintain our roads, but to avoid getting farther and farther and farther behind. This year, we're taking $500,000 out of fund balance for basic operations. I think that's a huge mistake, and I think we should not be doing that. And if we do it, we need to understand what we're doing. That's money that's gotta come, that's $500,000 that has to be found year after year after year just to maintain what we're doing.
Mr. Didio?
To Mr. Batman, when do you think that would be the best time to do this? In January, February, March?
Do which?
What you're just saying?
The capital plan?
Yeah.
When we have the results of this analysis of the roads that indicates where they are, which are the worst roads, which have to be fixed. And there has to be more than a one-year plan.
Right. What's the time frame on the roads?
Well, I thought that study was gonna be done a month ago, so I don't know.
Right.
Well, if it's coming for it, George, when? A month?
That'll probably be at least a month, if not more, before it's completed.
So maybe by the end of the year, maybe not?
I'm hoping by the end of the year, yes.
Okay. Anybody else have any more comments on this area? Mr. Farrell?
Again, I have to stand with that line, that 5099 on the paving. You handed out this other literature to us a while back, and this indicated 5099 paving was originally 3.5 million. And it was reduced down to 2.5 million. So when we talk about taking this $1 million and adding it back to capital improvements, we're putting 500,000, or we're putting $1 million back in the paving line? I don't understand exactly where.
In terms of new paving, you end up with $500,000 plus whatever associated, labor is with that. It's unknown, the labor is all budgeted through highway administration
$500,000 is being reflected in the paving line,
Right.
and the other $500,000 is being reflected.
Well, it's unknown how much that would actually be, that would be spent, so Mr. Babin is right in the sense that it is helping operations, because there's gonna be some balance that's probably, left from that, it's not gonna be additional spending. I don't wanna represent it as all new, I'm trying to carry that for my own publicity, but, I don't wanna represent it as all new.
Yeah.
But I recognize that there's a dire need to address roads, but primarily I'm also interested in including that in the capital plan, because we're gonna be separate parts to that, because we're gonna have some equipment purchases that are gonna be, I was talking to Larry Lozer before, the meeting. I kiboshed his truck, but he's got, I forget now how many years old it is, it's like 23 or something, but, so sometime it's gonna break, and we're gonna need to replace his truck, so that's gotta be in there, so there are things like that that we're gonna do.
Anything else in this area? Mr. Runkle?
Page 206, there's a line called professional services. Basically in the middle of the, it's account 54059, it's
Yep.
right in the middle of the page. In 14, we spent 7,000. This year, we adopted a $60,000 budget. And next year, we're going back to 25,000. I guess just what falls in professional services that it George, that it varies?
This year it jumped very high because of this training done towards plowing.
For the one-man plowing? Okay.
Mr. Whitten?
Back to the paving line, the 500,000 that's been added to that is coming out of fund balance?
It ends up being out of
Yeah.
fund balance.
I agree with Keith. I mean, I'm not a fan of using fund balance for yearly budget items. I would like to move that we do not take that out of fund balance and that it goes on to the tax levy.
There a second? Mr. Baxter? Any discussion?
What's your specific motion in making, put the truck back into the budget?
No.
500,000.
Gone.
Leave it.
Fund balance and
Okay, there's separate fund balances for the D and the DN.
At the end.
so it would increase the transfer.
Well, you'd be using the fund balance, you can just use the fund balance of the D or the DM, and that has no effect on the tax levy. Okay, right? They have a fund balance, the D has, I think it was like 1.4 million at the end of 14. And I'm gonna make this up a little bit, I think the DM was around 800,000. So if you just make the motion, you can just draw it out of their fund balance and put it in here as an expenditure, and you're using their fund balance, that's how you would use it for the highway.
So the 500 stays in the 8 month.
It doesn't affect the tax levy. Okay, the A fund balance stays the same, and a separate D fund balance, that's $1.4 million. By putting 500,000 in for paving, you're gonna reduce their fund balance to an estimated 900,000.
So what does that do to our fund balance? Our draw now is we're up to like 1.4 by doing this.
Nothing unless you make a motion to fund it more.
But, my understanding, if I'm listening to this discussion correctly, is that you don't want to use anyone's fund balance to support roads, is that for that $500,000, is that correct? You wish to use the
Wasn't my
highway
motion.
fund balance?
I wouldn't wanna use any fund balance to fund road repair.
Mr. Runkle?
Might I suggest that we wait till the end of the night or the end of the session to decide, where the money comes from? We're not changing the budget right now, right, Tara? You're leaving the
No.
going in there.
Right, just where it's coming from.
So rather than get into the weeds and talk about, are we gonna have a 6% tax levy versus, that's my suggestion. I don't know.
I will withdraw my motion until further time.
Thank you, Mr. Whitman. Is there any other discussion on this particular area? Mr. Uncle?
Page 205. This is a revenue. No, this is salary savings. We had predicted 100 grand this year. We've hit roughly 80 grand so far, and we're reducing that to 60 grand. I mean, it's a negative expense, but is that, George, I mean, that's basically based on when somebody leaves, before we replace them, we take whatever money we were gonna pay and we throw it into this line.
And leave the position open for a while.
And leave the position open for a while.
Starts out
Is there any reason to expect less people to be leaving next year than there was this year? Or was this year a high year? Did you tick off a lot of people and they left, or?
I would say it'll be probably about the same number of retirements, maybe a few less than this year.
Okay, well, if you think it's gonna be a few less, then forget that one.
All right. If there's nothing else in this area, I'd ask Mr. Batman.
Where does the money for snow plowing come from, and which line, and where's the contractual amount that's paid to the towns? Wasn't clear to me. That wouldn't be under 5110, would it? Or would it, main to
I
roads?
believe it's 5142.
Page 213 is.
And is that both for, that's both the amount that's paid to the towns comes from which line?
Down at the bottom of the page, it says contract plowing,
Contract
54105.
plowing. Okay, so that's the town. And where does the salaries for that associated with plowing for county employees?
That is on the total in the 5110.
That is
All the
5110.
staff are budgeted in one place, yeah.
Okay, so my question then with 5110 on page, whatever page it was. There-
213.
213.
Thank you. Yeah, no, 5110,
203.
thank you. It's 203.
I'm sorry, no. 205.
Settle on 205. The 15, the question on this is that at this point, there's no change in the salaries, full-time or the overtime associated with it, or reflecting this associated with the plowing. I do understand that this is a cautionary move, and I think that makes sense, that we want to wait and see, but is there any projection of how much might be saved?
It might be saved,
With one-man plowing.
Yeah, the intent of doing one-man plowing was to save funds.
No, I haven't done that calculation. George had, some hours that he had estimated.
Okay. Well,
That'll be a work in progress
yes,
until we.
except, what I would propose, and we can't do this tonight, I'm sure, because we can't get it. If George could provide the numbers that he projects saving, what I would like to do is take that amount, put it into contingency, so it's still in the budget, but provide us a way to actually track that savings in a way that requires action, should we not save that money. I'm very concerned with this, that it just gets eaten up. The reason for doing this one-man plowing is to save money on the clearing of our roads. We ought to have enough faith to say, well, we think we're gonna save X number of dollars, but just in case, we are gonna set this money aside. I have no problem with the safety valve. I would just like it separated so that we can track it. Now, we don't have those numbers tonight, so if I might request that we get those numbers for the future.
Sure.
Thank you.
If I could draw your attention to page 210. This would be on the top of the page under trucks.
What'd you say?
We've gone from $500,000 in our 2015 adopted budget, and we are now reduced to $162,886.
What item are you looking at, Mike?
I'm looking at trucks,
On the top of the page.
5202, page 210.
Gotcha.
And George did what he was asked to do before. He brought in a list and a schedule of replacement of vehicles. I think that list remains active. Would you argue with that, George?
Actually, I believe my list came up to 751,000.
Yes. Mr. Whitman?
If you need $700,000 to maintain your fleet on the schedule that we put together, then why did you request $162,000?
I did.
He didn't,
Why does it say that?
it says that because I reduced it. I did that based on the idea that we would take a look at a capital budget and that those expenditures would fall into the capital equipment category, and we could determine what we were going to do relative to contracting versus paving and snow.
So the department request line in the budget does not reflect the department head's request?
No, actually, it does not, you're right.
Is that true with the whole budget?
Pretty much. I mean, you know, some of them were stay the same, some did not.
Then why do we have that line?
Well, because it was done when, I was trying to come in, I wasn't sure actually how the whole process was gonna go.
So this body doesn't truly know what the department heads are requesting for their budget?
That would be correct. And certainly, they're here, they can speak up.
You need $700,000 in that line to maintain our schedule on your fleet?
That's correct.
I would make the motion to change that to $700,000.
There a second? I'll second it. Mr. Baxter seconds as well. Any discussion on this line? Mr. Batman?
I'm interested, when was the capital replacement schedule done?
I believe in 2013, the resolution brought forward, but not X. I might be able to get that out for you.
That's because I didn't know if it was 13 or 3. The thing would point out is that looking, we may well need to spend a whole lot more than this, and probably will, but looking at it as total, a capital plan, I think is a good plan, because I go back to, if you remember, one of the things that we talked about for this year was doing things like one person plowing, the possibility of contracting with the towns for more plowing and some road maintenance, the potentially, in the long run, contracting more, the repaving and so on. If we do those things, then our need for equipment goes down, and we're a whole lot better served if we make sure certain what we're doing. The equipment replacement schedule that we're working with is the one we will need in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. So I think to put the money back in this year might be a mistake.
Mr. Whitman?
I agree with Mr. Batman, and that's our hopes and dreams and ifs. And if that doesn't happen, we're gonna be right back to where we were with equipment. And we'll have to spend even more money. So until we start seeing those savings roll in, we need to keep maintaining business as usual.
George, let me ask you, we do have towns that have picked up more roads to plow, is that true?
That's correct.
Okay, and we did contract out a little bit more paving this year?
Correct.
Okay. And from my perspective, I think it's wonderful to develop these plans, but I've sat here for a number of years and listened to these ideas, and it takes time to develop them, and it takes energy from the committees to follow through. I think George has done what we've asked. I think we'd be in a pretty precarious position if we were to leave this line alone without adding some dollars there. When did we buy the trucks, George? 13 or 14, when they had to go out on the bond? Was that 14? 13? Okay. And that was really a necessary thing due to the dilapidation of the vehicle, so nothing's cheap. Mr. Batman?
Well, may I offer an amendment then? I think that the reasoning, I can't argue the reasoning, I think it makes sense, but I'm concerned about the amount. Could I suggest that we take $350,000, and again, we put it in contingency, not in this line item, so that we can track the expenditure and we
Is that a
can-
motion?
Yes, and then we can spend it when we need it, yes.
There is a second for Mr. Batman's motion.
I wanted
So,
to have the clarification of that this is in the DM fund, so you need to clarify how you wanna fund this, whether you wanna increase and transfer to the D fund, and then we can flow it through the DM, or do you wanna use the fund balance? I mean, you've already made a previous motion, I think, to keep the tax levy in the A fund at 1.25, so that means this would come from the A fund balance. I just guess wanna clarify what anybody's suggesting.
Okay, there's no second for Mr. Batman's amendment, so we're back to the original motion of Mr. Whitman. And you wanted to make that total 700,000? Mr. Runkle?
yeah, I was just clarifying, what do we wanna make that? The new total is 700,000, or is the new total 662,000? You're adding 500?
I'm gonna make it 700,000 if that's what the department head's request was to maintain our schedule.
Our request was actually 751. I realize you're heading the wrong way.
Mr. Foley?
Mr. Chair, that's a large amount of money. I mean, but the thing I haven't heard is, I think what Lynn was trying to get at is where is the money coming from?
Right.
I haven't heard that in motion. Is it coming from increasing the tax levy, or is it?
Well,
coming from-
let me ask Ms. Marinelli or Ms. Sinclair this way. What is the least painful way to put these dollars back in that line?
Well, Mr. Rumpel
We
is
take it
looking
for
to financing the budget, so, you know, if you, probably the easiest way to do this, it would increase the transfer from A to the DM, unless you're planning to use part of the fund balance. So it depends when you get to the end, how much you need to transfer from A to DM or D, and then how you choose to finance that. You can either increase the tax levy or draw on the fund balance. So that, either one is painful in one way or another.
Mr. Whitman?
I believe for Mr. Batman's motion that we passed at the beginning, that any changes we make are gonna be reflected in the fund balance, right? This evening, anyway.
The A fund, yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not gonna support that in the long term, we'll have to fix that later, but
Right.
for now, that's where it's gonna have to draw from, and when that gets to zero, then we'll fuss with the tax cap.
Mr. Baxter?
George, the trucks that were bonded for 2013, I wasn't here, so how many trucks was that?
That was, I had 3 or 4.
4.
Plow trucks. Correct. And you know what the payment on that is?
That's lumped into a bond,
Yeah, it was,
Bonded
so you don't know exactly, there's no
We pay
payment
it-
book for
We pay
those.
it yearly, or?
yeah.
Yep.
One of the things that I would certainly consider is being that, I mean, that must be $100,000, $200,000 a year. Is to ensure that when that bond is paid off, it's a 5-year bond.
No, I can look here.
No, that bond was longer than 5 years. I don't think you have a 5-year bond. You're still paying for those trucks.
That got rolled into something else this last year to
Yeah, they,
push the
Because
payments back.
the best thing to do is, when those trucks are paid off, bond for 4 more with reasonably the same payment. Instead of saying, oh, the bond's paid for, we've got this money, just buy 4 more trucks, continue the same payment, or reasonably the same payment.
It's part of a $20 million bond.
They went,
It went in with the 911 community college, so we rolled it in to save financing fees, so we, kept it all together. And it was 810,000 was the original borrowing.
so just like people that finance their car for a long time, these trucks will be wore out when they're paid for.
Yes, they'll be replaced.
Okay.
Any other discussion?
Yeah.
Mr. Foley?
What would this bring the, drawn fund balance with this amount, when?
2,062,000.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
on top of.
Okay.
Any other discussion on the motion? Everyone clear on the motion? Make that account 700,000? Madam Clerk? Clerk?
Whoop. All set? Tucker Whitman,
Yes.
Ben Vitale,
No.
Mark Farrell,
No.
Paul Pickney,
No.
Joseph Runkel,
Yes.
Keith Batman,
No.
Hans Petrus excused, Terry Baxter,
No.
Joseph Bennett,
No.
Frank Reginelli,
No.
Patrick Mahonic,
No.
Timothy Lattimore is excused, Michael Didio,
No.
Ryan Foley,
No.
Michael Chapman.
No.
Thanks, Joe.
Defeated.
Ain't that tough?
I would propose a motion that, relative to the same line, that we increase from 162 to $350,000. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Whitman seconds. Any discussion on that?
What would that bring up the fund balance to?
What was 2,350, the same one?
170.
Subtract 350.
17.
Second?
Mr. Foley?
Before we go ahead and do that, George, what does bringing you up to $350,000 do as opposed to 162? I mean, I realize it's $150,000 more, but what are we actually getting for our money? We keep asking, we give $100,000 to one department. He says, oh, do maintenance on buildings and this and that, but we don't actually know what we're receiving out of giving these guys money. I'm just trying to get an idea.
In the original budget for 751, we included 2 pickup trucks at 28,000 apiece, 2 tandem axle plow trucks, 10-wheel dumps as well, at 225,000 apiece, 1999 road tractor at 135,000, a power broom for 40,000, and a single axle truck for 70,000 is what was originally included in that. So basically, after going through the shop, you probably see which needs the most repairs and re-modify to spend $350 on what was in the worst shape here.
Anyone else? If not, Madam Clerk,
And this is to put 350,000 in.
bring the account to 350.
Right. Okay, Tucker Whitman,
Yes.
Ben Vitale,
No.
Mark Farrell, Paul Pickney,
No.
Joseph Runkel,
Yes.
Keith Batman,
No.
Hans Petrus excused, Terry Baxter,
No.
Joseph Bennett,
No.
Frank Reginelli,
No.
Patrick Mahonic,
No.
Timothy Lattimore is excused, Michael Didio,
No.
Ryan Foley, Michael Chapman.
Yes.
Thanks, Joe.
Defeated.
Defeated. Okay. Any other questions or discussion on this particular line for equipment? All right, I did have a question on, page 212, I'm not sure, George, maybe you can address this. This was in the buildings maintenance account. 54012, kind of towards the top of the page under central garage.
What page was that, Jer?
We had 5,014, and we brought it down. Now we're gonna be at $3,000. You have a this account for just maintenance at your headquarters, or what?
Correct. That would include all the buildings with the exception of the motor pool. Which would be Maine, Roger, Auburn, Iowa, and Venice.
With the exception of the motor pool.
Correct.
So is this a reasonable number?
It's probably on the light side.
What did you ask for?
Get our building user ground director to pitch in.
What did you ask for, George?
I don't remember without taking back to what else. See, in 2017, we had 4,500. I would say it was probably somewhere between 4,000 and 4,500.
Let me just ask you another question about all the auto parts, that are listed that you buy. I note the number of locations. Is it possible to do business with 2 or 3 vendors and get a preferred price?
We could look at that through purchasing to see.
Yeah, just a question. Anyone else? Mr. Vitale?
Yeah, looking down a little bit under the gas, George, 2014, we were at 818,000. This past year, we budgeted 848,000. You said our actual, or our current right now is 848. I know gas prices are maybe 2/3 of what they were. We're going down by 7,000. So my question is, this year's budget at 848, and you're saying we currently are at 848. Is this accurate?
No.
Or,
It's not a projection, I mean, that's still just the budget.
Do you have, Lynn, by any chance, what Munis shows right now in that account?
I'm not sure how I get on this.
I'm just, there's been a significant savings in gas for a lot of people. And I don't know, with $800,000 worth of gas, I would think that you'd be able to save more than 7,000. Not that I wanna take it out of your budget, but, that will make up for areas of like building maintenance and things where you need $1,000 or whatever. That's all I'm saying.
Could we have that number sometime?
Yeah, it's projection and,
Just where we are year to date even, that's a big help.
Grace will go look it up, so she can figure
That's what I'm saying.
Mr. Whitman?
Is that, we don't know what you requested, George. For all I know, it was $3,000. Do you know what you requested?
For building maintenance?
No, for gas.
We're spending money left and right, so.
I don't think,
I would think that's probably close to what that's probably close to what I asked for. The other thing is that has to balance out, because there's a revenue release. The majority of the gas I sell.
Right.
I don't use that much. Diesel, another story.
Mr. Whitman?
I didn't realize we didn't know what the departments were requesting in this budget. I'm hesitant to even continue with it at this point, and I'm scared about what we've already done. Unless I missed something major and didn't get a sheet with the department request on it.
Mr. Mahoney?
I mean, I concur. I think it's concerning that we don't know those requests, and I guess my question would be, what would be the time frame to get a budget that shows the actual requests from the department heads, so we know what changes were made? And we can, is it a week, is it 2 weeks, is it 3 days? And then we can come together and actually analyze what the budget is.
It'd be, you could do it fairly quickly, I mean, it has still all the original, submissions. I was actually just looking for my notebook, which, I couldn't find, so I have to assume that it's at home, but, I wanted to check on what the budget change sheets, because I did hand out sheets at the very beginning
Mr. Runkle?
Let's say this right, our county administrator is given the job to bring the legislature a balanced budget, her recommendations. She has sat down with department heads, she has made changes, no doubt about that. Department heads are here now, talking about these different areas. And I would hope that we don't delay this process to go back and see what all the department heads had originally budgeted, because it's pretty obvious that it would be a lot higher than what it is here now, and we'd be spinning our wheels.
Mr. Mahoney?
I don't disagree that there were changes made, and there should be changes made. I would like to see what those changes were. And when we can ask a department head what they requested, and they can't tell us, if we go line by line through this budget, they can't, there's no way they can remember every request they made. Why is that line even there? I mean, that was a gauge for us to see where the changes were made in the budget, what was being done, and right now, that's a key piece of information in my eyes that we don't have. That I would feel more comfortable going forward with that piece of information. And not saying that we're gonna give them what they wanted, but at least that shows the request and where there's some, big shifts in what the request was. I mean, when you're talking $500,000 in equipment, we should know that that change had been made.
Ms. Sinclair, I couldn't hear. When did you think you would have numbers?
Well, I can't say precisely, but I would think, I have the original submissions, so it will be fairly quickly, because it's a matter of keying it in.
Guesstimate?
Well, this is Wednesday, I would anticipate by Monday certainly.
Mr. Didio?
A motion to adjourn until we get the figures from the department heads.
So moved.
We have a second. Any discussion
Second.
on this? I would really like to discuss this a little bit further and have some commentary, but Mr. Batman?
I agree with Mr. Ronco. We charged a budget manager and the budget director, whatever y'all's title are. We charged them with considering the request, coming in with the budget. For us to go through now and say, what did you request? What did you request? Why'd you need it? Why did you change it? It seems to me that kind of dangerous, if not inappropriate. To go through I'm sorry, the department heads have seen this budget, correct? Suzanne?
Correct.
The department heads have seen this budget. If they have major concerns, they need to come forward, and for
And
us
they
then
have.
to say, well, I'm sorry, you didn't come forward, well, let's make sure, it's condescending and inappropriate to the department head, because it assumes that they can't look at the budget. I just think it's a mistake, I see no reason to do it.
I would just comment that, we started this process, and at the very beginning, I sent out an email to department heads as well as legislators, indicating that they were all invited to come here, and each one that we processed in the budget review thus far has had an opportunity to comment. We've asked those that we've talked to this evening to make any comments. Yes, I would like to see what their original requests were. And if Ms. Sinclair can produce those, then we can get them and chew on them. But presently, we are over the tax cap, right? Is that correct?
No, we're at the tax cap, we're using 1.5 million at the fund balance.
Okay, we're at the tax cap, and we've got, a few more pages to go here, and there's certainly gonna be some adjustments. So, I would like to see the process continue. I think it would be a disservice to those we've already met with, to adjourn tonight and say we're gonna wait for more numbers. We have a great opportunity this year. Take a look at this process, take a look at the numbers that we've been supplied. We're gonna receive some additional information, and perhaps finish this up, one with a budget hearing on November the 18th, and then with a special ledge meeting on November the 19th, and we could be in a position to receive the final budget at our November meeting, vote, and have it behind us. But it's the pleasure of the body. Anybody else have anything they would like to say with regard to the motion? Ms. Sinclair?
Well, I just wanted to, say, these are what I was looking for. And the sheets that were handed out on August 25th appear to have the original amounts that were requested by the, departments, and change that I made, or that the department makes, and the recent budget.
What does that sheet look like? Does that say budget changes by department?
It says budget changes county administrator and budget changes departments.
So that 850,000 on the gas line, that's what he requested?
Yes, I've checked a couple of accounts and it appears that that's correct. I haven't had a chance to go through every single one to make sure that they are, changes, but.
Anyone else have a comment on the motion that's on the floor? Mr. Baxter?
Yes, I'd like to say that the lack of the right numbers in here is a reason for caution, but I don't believe it's a reason for stoppage of the process that we're doing.
Anyone else? Mr. Foley?
Yeah, you know, we can still continue to make changes tonight if we stay in session. And we can also review the numbers once we get them and make changes after that too. There's no reason to end the full session when we can still make changes after as well.
Anyone else have any comments? Mr. Runkle?
Call a question.
Question has been called. Madam Clerk?
Tucker Whitman,
Yes.
Ben Vitale,
No?
Mark Farrell,
No.
Paul Pinkney.
This is to continue?
No, this is.
No,
This is
No,
to
this is to
adjourn.
To adjourn.
No.
Joseph Runkel,
Sorry, Tuck. No.
Keith Batman,
No.
Hans Petrus excused, Terry Baxter,
Oh.
Joseph Bennett,
No.
Frank Reginelli,
No.
Patrick Mahonic,
Yes.
Timothy Lattimore is excused, Michael Didio,
Yeah,
Ryan Foley,
No.
Michael Chapman.
No.
Defeated.
Defeated. Okay, back to work here.
Grace has some information on that gas line. So year to date, it's actually kind of low, it's only 419,000.
Wow.
And just for information, in 2013, we spent 633,000.
633? In what year? 13.
It went up to 818, so this year, I mean, it's only projected to be 600. I mean, I don't know, George, if there's a lot of purchases still to come in, you know. This is probably not evenly bought every month. They buy it as they need it, I think.
Is that year-to-date number end of September, or like
Right now.
20th of, whatever today's date is?
Yes.
21st? 419. I'd like to make a motion.
Please
We
do.
reduce the gas line from 841 to 600,000.
second.
And we have a second. Joe, just so I can catch up, can you tell me the page number here?
212, I'm sorry, 212. and it's
Gotcha.
Almost the middle of the
Thanks.
line, it's gas. It's gas.
So reduce that line from the 841 figure to 600,000. And we have a second. Any discussion on that? Mr. Farrell?
Okay, fine.
George requested the 850. How comfortable do you feel going down that low?
If I knew the futures, I wouldn't be here. Probably could get reduced. I would also want to reduce the revenue line where we sell it, because again, we have the majority of that is sold to other departments. I don't personally use it, the city of Auburn also uses it.
Great.
So I want to drop, if we drop that by a couple $100,000, I want to drop our revenue also.
It's not gonna really have difference on the budget.
No. Where's the revenue line?
208.
Mike, Suzanne?
Where are
While people are looking, I've had an offer, somebody, if you would like to have copies of the changes that were made, we can do that this evening.
Yeah.
So which line on 208? Didn't see that it says gas. Is that diesel still? Not diesel, it's gas.
Which line you looking at for revenue?
We can't find it.
It's, right there on page 208, it's department reimbursement, $303,000.
Yep.
And that really is like George is saying, people from the A fund pay for the gas and the DM fund, so.
Oh, free, okay.
It's purchasing it for some outside agencies and the rest of the county. We didn't use gas, really.
So are you suggesting, George, if we drop the expense by 200 grand, we drop this by 200 grand?
I believe there's two lines, I think
The highway agency.
the highway agencies is the outside.
The 645.
Yes, so between the two, they have to be dropped.
Oh, wait, the revenue's greater than 841. Those two lines, that can't possibly be right.
Well, there's also repair work in there.
That's true.
Any further discussion on this motion?
Oh, we're doing this motion, then the revenue motion separately? Is that correct?
Sure.
Unless Joe wants to couple it now.
Well, I'd amend the motion. Well, to get something on the floor and get it voted on, and then we can change it at the
All
next
right.
meeting. But I would
Any
amend
other
the
discussion
motion.
on the motion that's been made?
Pardon me?
I can't hear you.
Oh, the motion that I made was to reduce the expense side of gasoline to 600,000.
Right.
I'm gonna amend that motion to add that we reduce the revenue line on page 208, department reimbursement, by 100,000. Now, we may have to correct that when we get some more better, whatever, better information, from George or whatever. That's my amended motion.
Is there a second for that?
Second.
Mr. Vitale. Any other discussion on that? Madam Clerk?
Tucker Whitman,
No.
Ben Vitale,
Yes.
Mark Farrell,
No.
Paul Pickney,
No.
Joseph Runkel,
Yes.
Keith Batman,
Yes.
Hans Petrus excused, Terry Baxter,
Yes.
Joseph Bennett,
No.
Frank Reginelli,
No.
Pat Mahonik,
Nope.
Timothy Lattimore's excused, Michael Didio,
Yes.
Ryan Foley,
Yes.
Michael Chapman.
No.
Defeated.
Okay.
That's defeated. Mr. Vitale?
If that one didn't work, I'll go to page 210. You look in the middle of the line, it's, middle of the page is fuel oil. In 2014, the actual is 660,000. This year's budget is 650, so we saved 10,000 in the current year. I don't really know what the current usage is, but we're increasing it by $28,000. And again, my understanding of fuel prices, and I don't see them jumping up significantly in the next year. If anything, we should be at the same or just a tad lower.
Should be at the same,
So I don't know if we can possibly get what the current, where we are currently with fuel oil, but,
This number on the August 25th handout have a reflection that's close to where we were at that
I
time?
just gave it to her to make, I gave it to Kathleen who's making copies, I don't have it with me.
It's not listed on the sheet.
Well, we have others, I'll share mine. What I'm asking is this number reflect where it was or where it is in August?
This is also the same for, but he actually made a motion. No,
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. There was no change made. Anyone else have any comments, questions? While we're waiting,
Chairman, if you'd like to move on, we come back, this one would be fine with me.
Let's do it at 9:30.
we can certainly come back in a minute or two. Anybody else have any questions or observations within the area of highway? One thing I noticed in our contracts with towns, you see a pretty healthy increase, and I think there's gotta be a revamping of the formula going into future negotiations here. It's gotta be a lot closer to collaboration and helping one another than merely passing tax dollars back into the town. Did we get the number?
Man, they're hot off the press. Literally. Thank you.
Did you get one of these?
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll stick 'em with the minute. Thank you so much. You're so kind. Did Vitale's motion? Did he make a motion? He's just talking about fuel line. He didn't make a motion. I didn't mark him. I didn't mark him as having a motion. He was talking about the fuel line, the gas line, but he didn't. I don't have a motion. So I guess, no.
We were gonna come back to what he
Yeah.
was talking about. Anybody else have any comments while we're waiting? Are we good with numbers now?
Me? Couldn't hear you, me?
Mr. Didio? Anybody else have any other comments they wish to make on the area of the highway department? If not, I would ask that we take a look at the county sealer, 199. I know Larry's here. Thank you very much, Larry, and I think you've got something that you'd like to offer or tell us about.
Well, in actuality, the original budget I put in a truck, replacement truck, we pulled it out. We should re-show that in 2017, probably under trackable, about 25,000.
How much?
Probably 25,000.
25,000.
But in doing so, we're gonna be running the old truck for another year, and I did not not change the auto expense, which is 54,008, you probably should be adding about $2,000 for rear brakes and tires for that truck, bringing it from 4,000 to 6,000.
Did you say 2,000, Larry? In the auto expense line?
4 to 6,000.
And you were pulling that truck 25,000 out of where?
2016, in my original budget, we pulled it out, put it in 2017, but we hadn't actually put it in.
Okay.
2017.
So that really wasn't in the 16 budget?
Well, it wasn't the initial one when I first started, and then we decided when I sat down with Suzanne to pull it, and we should have re-showed in 2017.
So what you're looking for is $2,000.
For maintenance, right.
But for this year's budget, yeah.
Mr. Batman?
Yeah, I hate to do this, but I'll have to move that.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Runkle. Any discussion on this? This will help keep Larry's vehicle on the road here for the coming year. $2,000.
Is that auto expense?
Yes.
Yes, to add to auto expense 54008. Mr. Farrell?
Off on the motion, but it's pertinent. On the next page, you got a minimum equipment line where we went from $800 to $2,200.
Each year, we have to certify some of my equipment, every piece of equipment or test equipment has to be certified every 5 years. It's set up on rotation, so it has to be a high year. The next year it drops down to, well,
250.
yeah,
Drops down a couple years.
jumps up and down based on that, and having recertified each year. So, this year was extremely low year, so it must be certified.
Just to follow up if I could, who sets the ceiling fees? I see the revenue line is ceiling
It
fees.
is the maximum amount allowed by New York State. If New York State changes that number, we'll follow suit.
Anyone else? If not, Madam Clerk?
Okay, this is to put $2,000 back into the auto expense line, under Mr. Roser's budget. Okay, Tucker Whitman,
Yes.
Ben Vitale,
Yes.
Mark Farrell, Paul Pickney,
Yes.
Joseph Runkel,
Yes.
Keith Batman,
Yes.
Hans Petrus excused, Terry Baxter,
Yes.
Joseph Bennett,
Yes.
Frank Reginelli,
Yes.
Patrick Mahonik,
Yes.
Timothy Lattimore is excused, Michael Didio,
Yeah.
Ryan Foley,
Yes.
Michael Chapman.
Yes. Okay, passed. Larry, anything else? Anybody else have anything for Larry? All right, well, thanks a million. Let's see, we move on to, I think, the Sheriff's Department.
Mr. Chapman?
Mr. Runkle.
I'd like to step back 2 departments and discuss fuel oil. Do we have a number on fuel oil? For the highway department?
Yes. Sorry, I have my computer around here. Year-to-date is 373,000. In 13, they spent 561.
Fuel oil for heat.
Mr. Vitale.
Here's the futures guy.
I'd like to make a motion to reduce line item 54031 fuel oil from 678 to 578.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Didio seconds. Any discussion? Mr. Whitman?
George, is that gonna be enough fuel oil to get you through the year?
Prices stay where they are.
Not to be back asking for money, I guess.
Again, I would worry about the revenue portion that we sell to Town and True, Steve Albert, Senate Fire.
Anyone else? If not, Madam Clerk?
Okay, this is to reduce line item 54031 fuel oil from 678,000 to 578,000. Tucker Whitman,
No.
Ben Vitale,
Yes.
Mark Farrell,
No.
Paul Pickney,
No.
Joseph Runkel,
Yes.
Keith Batman,
Yes.
Hans Petrus excused, Terry Baxter,
Yes.
Joseph Bennett,
No.
Frank Reginelli,
Yes.
Patrick Mahonik,
No.
Timothy Lattimore is excused, Michael Didio,
Yes.
Ryan Foley,
Yes.
Michael Chapman,
No.
defeated.
Defeated. Anything else in the highway department? George, you got anything else? Anybody else? Okay, if we could flip now to the judicial. If we start in the area of page 167. Other than that. First thing I'd like to say is I would hope that we can adjust the jail revenue downward. I was just talking to the sheriff prior to our meeting, and there is a national movement with meetings with the president today and chiefs of police and sheriffs and state police throughout the country to reduce the arrest. And we know in recent weeks or months, the federal inmate revenue has been very little. Presently, we have an adjoining county that has a great need to house prisoners due to the lack of space. I'm sure they're gonna solve that, probably within a year. So, our expectations, I would hope, could be reduced a little bit and, from my perspective, put it in a real world, because I've always said this is nothing more than a bonus when we're receiving these dollars for boarding out-of-county prisoners. It's nothing you can count on, like forecasting the weather. Anybody have any comments under the sheriff's? I had a question under, on page 169, on the food service. With a change in the number of people, are these numbers good? Or I was thinking it might be even larger. On 54028 on page 169, it's right down there towards the bottom. It goes from 503 to 485.
The food service?
Yeah,
I think that's a good number.
good number?
Yes.
Very good, I'm happy. Mr. Foley?
Are we all set with the inmate revenue? Are we all set with the inmate revenue?
I haven't heard anybody else comment on it. I would still like to take it down.
All right, well, I'll move on unless there's,
I'll come back to it, that's fine. Go wherever you want.
okay. Something that was brought up last night, and I discussed with, the sheriff, is that there was that overtime issue with it increasing, on here, on the paper that we all have, it shows $30,000. He said that there was indeed a salary savings from having having positions out that he wasn't filling, and therefore it came back in overtime, but it was the lesser amount to do so. I asked him for a list of those people, he was able to provide this, and then when I asked him tonight, I'll have him explain that just a little bit more, Sheriff, of what we talked about earlier with the 4 people.
There's four people that have been vacant for a period of time now, different time frames throughout the year. This is a savings that we have from those 4 people. We only have a school once a year for custody schools, custody academy. And that usually, unless we have it in-house, and we can't have it in-house unless we have 5 missing, 5 vacancies, then Albany lets us have it in-house. Less than that, we have to ship a whole Onondaga County, and they only have that once a year. So that's usually in the spring, so all these
vacancies are vacant until we have an academy. They're passed by the legislature, they're approved, they just haven't been filled because of the academy. So that's the reason, that's what Ryan and I talked about earlier. That's why the salary savings.
Okay.
Anyone else? Mr. Bennett?
Yes, on, page 163, the navigation unit. I'd like to reduce that to 0 all the way across the board on that. I understand that, you know, we have a unit, but I've had people wonder if we generate any revenue from it, or if they actually do anything. I've had numerous people from 3 different lakes, Lake Ontario, Owasco Lake, and Cayuga Lake, say, what does our boat patrol do?
Are you making a motion of any kind?
I would like to make a motion that we eliminate that, that line,
That revenue line? No, all of it.
the whole line. I can go down and eliminate all the lines that are there, but I mean, to get us to, department total, what, 3111, the last line? I don't believe we need the unit. I don't believe it generates revenue, and I don't believe it does what it's supposed to do out there.
Is there a second for Mr. Bennett's motion?
That's the revenue.
Is there a second? Any discussion? Sheriff Gould?
Joe, I respect your opinion, but without us being out there, there's no more state police, there's no more DEC, there is nothing at all on this lake for safety on our lakes at all. If we took our boat patrol away, it would be rampant out there. There'd be no one out there to do patrol, nothing. And there would be no safety issues, nothing out there. What was it, 2 years ago, our boat patrol saved 2 lives up in Lake Ontario. If our boat patrol wasn't out there, 2 people would be dead because of it. I mean, we assist people out there. I know what you're saying about arresting people and stuff like that. The boat patrol's not out there to arrest everybody that violates the law, just like our road patrol. If we wrote everybody that was speeding, everybody in here probably get red. It's not what it's about. It's about safety and assisting our citizens. It actually costs this county $55,000. It's 50% reimbursed by the state for the other 50%. So for $55,000, we have 4 boats. We're the only people you see on our lakes. And we have more freshwater lakeshore in this county than any county in New York State. No one would be covering any of the county lakes or the New York State canals.
Mr. Didio?
Sheriff, how many arrests or violations were served this past summer?
I have no idea without looking like. I have no idea.
Was there?
Well, yeah, we made arrests, absolutely we made arrests. I mean, do we arrest everybody we stop? No. You know, my boat patrol, I started off when I took this job, is not out there to harass people, stop people, and scream and yell at them. We're out there to assist the public that works hard every day and has a family out there. We're out there for their safety. And that's exactly what we're out there for. If there's an arrest at DWI and they see it, they'll arrest them. That we haven't had one in 2 years. That means that there's been no boat accidents, there was a DWI involved, or whatever it may be. There is tickets issued out there constantly. Could there be more? Of course there could be more. There could be more on our road patrols too. That's not what we're out there for, is to arrest everybody and give somebody a ticket.
Has there been
We're out
any?
there to protect us.
Has there been any violations or anything that, for throwing garbage over the side of the boat, where in the Bay of Pigs, where they had the parties, and then on Monday morning?
Without looking at the stats, I'm sure there has been.
Well, I'm just saying.
No, I'm sure there has been. I don't have
I
the
wanna
stats
get
here.
that out, because that's a key issue. On Monday morning, you go up to the shore on Dogle, and we're picking up a ton of trash that comes out of that particular area. And I'm just saying, if we hit a few of these, or maybe even more, then there's gonna be some less of that garbage going into the lake.
Absolutely.
Mr. Bennett, do you have something else?
No, Mr. Didio asked.
All right, Mr. Baxter?
Yeah, I'd like to say that I really hope the sheriff doesn't put a boat patrol out there and say, bring back the money. They're there for the safety of the people. The most effective thing is the physical presence of them out there.
Yep.
And they do write tickets. 5, 6 years ago, my registration was expired and I got a ticket. So, they are doing their job.
Mr. Vitale.
This is not in support or against, but I was just a question, Sheriff. Seneca County or the other side of Cayuga Lake, is that all Seneca County, and do they have somebody out there?
No, we do on Cayuga Lake, but it splits halfway down the middle.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is the county on the other side, which is, I think, Seneca, do they have a boat patrol out there?
Anyone else? If not, Madam Clerk?
Okay, this is to take all the money out of the boat patrol,
Yep, navigation.
navigation. Okay, Tucker Whitman,
No.
Ben Vitale,
No.
Mark Farrell,
No.
Paul Pickty,
No.
Joseph Runkle,
No.
Keith Batman,
Yes.
Hans Petrus excused, Terry Baxter,
No.
Joseph Bennett,
Yes.
Frank Reginelli,
No.
Patrick Mahonik,
No.
Timothy Lattimore is excused, Michael Didio,
No.
Ryan Foley,
No.
Michael Chapman.
No.
Defeated.
That is defeated. This time, I'd like to go back to page 168, and thanks to Mr. Foley, reminding me about the jail inmate figures. Presently, they're budgeted at 1.35. I will move to reduce that figure to 1.1.
What number was that?
Is there a second?
60.
Mr. Didio,
Second.
any discussion? Mr. Bettman?
Will there be an associated decrease in expenditure? And if so, where will that come from?
I'm looking to
I'm sorry.
our team to help out here.
Will there be an associated decrease in expenditure?
No.
So these people don't
Well,
eat?
there
or-
will be, as far as meals, that's all. It's mandated because of the amount of cells. It doesn't matter how many inmates we have in there. Because of the amount of cells available to have inmates, that's how Albany gauges how many COs.
Okay.
It's always been there.
That's gonna be pretty minimal, though. The meal money?
Yeah, it will.
Any other discussion, Mr. Runkle?
Well, the sheriff gave us a sheet here, which, if I'm reading this right, through the end of September, we billed $1 million, $1,150,000, which is 3/4 of the way through the year, so we've got another 33, I mean, if things remain the same through October, November, and December, we're gonna hit this year's budget
Yeah, in excess of
of $1,350,000, so I guess I'm not gonna support your motion.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, you gotta take into consideration, Oswego County is leaning on us hard because they don't have any room. They're gonna remedy that situation. You're not gonna see, the borders coming down here.
Okay.
And federal inmate, folks are, pretty flat, or I'll say below, what was expected or what has occurred. So historically, we're headed downhill. Sheriff?
It's certainly up to this body what they make this revenue at, but just a little history over the year. As the year progressed, we were losing federal inmates. They're just not, I've talked to the US Marshals, they're not making federal arrests like they have been in the past. Today's date, we have 26 federal inmates in there. 2 years ago, we had 77. And we've got a great rapport with the US Marshal. I talked to them again this morning. They're just not making arrests. If they will, they'll send them to us. But the boarded in from other counties, as the chairman said, that's a bonus. I called the sheriffs in these other counties, their personal friends. They said, because they have no jail space, they will send us up, but they can't guarantee they'll keep that. I'm talking about the boarded in other counties.
Right.
Mr. Runkle?
Dave, do you know, do these other counties sending us these inmates because they're full? Are they full? Are they gonna not do this in the future because they're building more jail space, or
Well,
because?
the main one here is Oswego County, and Motod has tried to get a new jail up there for years. Now, what their legislature does up there is up to them, but until they build a new jail, he's gonna be overfull. So, they have very few beds. They make a lot of arrests. It's 120,000 population up there, so they make more arrests than us. So it will be full, and he guaranteed me, as long as they have an overflow, he will keep giving it to us. But this fluctuates. We were at 20 a couple weeks ago for that, and now today we're at 14, so that fluctuates.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Bevan?
I mean, how much is the dollar reduction, I'm sorry, in revenue?
250.
200.
200,000?
Yeah.
Okay, what I would suggest is that this is an unknown. I understand your reasoning, and it's a good one. But what I would like to do is keep the pressure on the sheriff, because he's been able to come up with it so far. And the jail budget is 9.6 million, which means $250,000, even if they don't hit the revenue. All he's gotta do is sometime during the year, over the course of the year, find between 1.5% and 2% in expense savings. That's a reasonable target. If the revenue falls short, can't find the savings, well, then we can revisit it. But at this point, it seems to me that premature based upon what if, without any associated expenditure. It's just I don't know where it'll come from, and I bet you don't either. But over the course of a year, 1% is not a lot to find, and I think it's a mistake to do it.
Anyone else? If not, Madam Clerk?
Okay, and this is to reduce the revenue?
Yes, down to 1.1.
This, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, this brings
Mr.
our,
Foley.
this brings our draw on the fund balance, it increases it, correct?
Yep.
And that's going to increase it 250 to 1.19. Either one.
So you're asking where 250 would put you?
Yeah.
Okay, so currently it's at 135, so.
It'll be done.
Oh, from 1. So 1.777588 is the fund balance.
Right now, without this.
No, with that.
With
You're making the motion to reduce it by 250,000
Thank you.
to 1.1. Okay, with it, it will get you to 1.77.
Anyone else? If not, Madam Clerk?
Tucker Whitman,
Yes.
Ben Vitale,
Then, no.
Thank you.
no? Mark Farrell,
No.
Paul Pinkney,
No.
Joseph Runkel,
No.
Keith Batman,
No.
Hans Petrus excused, Terry Baxter,
No.
Joseph Bennett,
No.
Frank Reginelli,
No.
Patrick Mahonik,
No.
Timothy Lattimore's excused, Michael Didio,
No.
Brian Foley,
No.
Michael Chapman.
Yes.
Defeated.
That's defeated, thank you. Anyone else have anything there in the Sheriff's Department? Excuse me. If not, we could move over to the district attorney. I think that's around 135 we start, or 127, 128.
What page is that? I'm sorry. Yes, sure. Thank you.
Anybody have any comments relative to the district attorney's office or questions at this time? John, you wanna explain what you're handing out here, or?
Yes, this afternoon, we discovered that there were some issues in the budget as printed, some of which were corrected already, some of which weren't. So this is essentially trying to mimic pages 135 and 136 in the printed budget. Specifically, the entire investigator salary is included under the CARP grant. And only 31,000 of it should have been 31,000. It should have been into the salary line of the DA's budget, where the revenue for 31,000 from DSS was included. So the salary in 15 is listed as 174, but it really should be 143. For the next year, it'll be 143. We also adjusted, we had applied for, the deadline was last Friday at noon. We applied for next year's CART grant. We applied for the amount of 215,000, which we expect to get. So we didn't have a number for this year. We took what we had this year for next year. So we've increased that to 215,000. We've adjusted the fringes, and so the reality is this year's budget, as printed, was a 36,800 in surplus. It actually should be 31,000 more there, but then you'd have to add 31,000 in the cost to the DA salary, so it's a wash. But in terms of CART, it was actually higher than that. Next year, if we get the grant, again, which we expect to do, it should come in under the amount, that the whole cost of the program should be under the amount of the grant. It should be about 212,800, and the grant should be 215,000. So that's what, this was just trying to correct some of the errors.
Okay, so in our budget book here, the numbers that we have, what are you saying that has to be corrected here?
The current salaries.
Where are you looking?
Under 2015, I'm looking at lines 51001, in the middle of this page I handed out. And it
But
should,
wait a minute until we all find that page. I don't know what page.
129.
it's on,
135?
I think it's on page 135.
Okay,
That was 129.
51001.
Yes, under 1169, which is the CART grant. The salary right now lists the total investigator salary, and really, that's 174. It should be 143. That's why for 2016, we amended it to 143.
143.
Which is a,
You have one of these?
I do not.
You have another one?
yeah, I emailed them.
Thank
out,
you.
but it was later in the day when they discovered this, and so.
Okay. What else?
The revenue, which is up top at 43074 for next year, I believe should appropriately be 215,000 is what we expect to get under the grant for next year.
So you wanna go from 100 to 215?
151,000 to 215,000. Someone broke apart the CARPS grants. We had two grants this year, one for 100,000, one for 51 and change. They show us one line in 2015, but two lines in 2016. So it should go from 151 and change to 215.
A second, what do you think?
Anything else?
The fringes, there were some issues with the fringes under the retirement, which is right in the very middle of the page, line 58002. It's listed for next year at like 21,000. It should be about 16,600. The other fringes.
Yeah, wait a minute, where, you gotta get there. 58002?
Yes.
Yep.
Is that what you say, John?
Yes.
Okay.
It's the third line up from the
On
bottom.
on page 134.
I think it's 135, third line from the bottom.
134. And you wanna change that to what?
16,602 for next year.
From 12?
No, it's listed, it should be listed.
21, 135.
Page 130.
I'm sorry, that I'm looking at the wrong one, I'm on 34. So you're on 135 under retirement.
Yes, line 58002 for 16 should go to 16,602 from 21. All of those lines are modified slightly because the salary that they're applied to is modified, but that was the biggest of the changes.
Is that on your sheet here?
It is. It's in the-
16,602?
Right in the middle on the far right-hand margin.
Okay. Anything else?
Well, each of those fringes that are under the personal services fringes are modified because the salary reduced, so the fringes that accompany, you know, the FICA and retirement and all of that go down somewhat, but that was the biggest. The total, fringe should be 192, 334 with salary and fringe. And the tentative budget should total out to 212,800. And the revenue should be 215.
I'm sorry, the total includes what? Does total include the contractual, professional services and conference fees?
It does, as a practical matter, I don't know that we're gonna spend it all on that, but it's included in the total. We put in for 17,000, professional services, that's for fiscal, for accountants, for audit books and so on. And then there's several thousand in there for training and travel and so on.
You got it balanced. You knew we could do
So how much money have you received in 15?
Just saying.
We received 151,000 under the CARP grant, 35,000 under a heroin grant from Senator Zolio, member item. We received approximately 60,000 in legal fees from DSS. And am I missing something? I think that's it. I think that's everything. So we're substantially more than our expense for this year. Next year, we should be slightly more than our expense.
Had he actually received 151,000? I understood it was more like 100. That
Well,
the grant was 151.
The grant for the year of 151, and we're in the process of actually vouchering all the money to the state, but we expect to
Yeah,
voucher
I followed with
151.
the chairman. How much has actually been received from all sources for this activity?
I expect, I'm sorry, we're gonna voucher the full amounts of the grants, and I believe the
Understand
60,000.
How much has actually been received? The question is received. Vouching is one thing, but how much
Let me
received?
ask it a different way. We haven't received copies of your quarterly reports to Albany. Do those reports reflect a certain amount of dollars?
The quarterly reports have all been filed with Albany, we can get them to you. The vouchers are being
No,
filed.
but answer my question. My question is, do those reports associate dollars?
The quarterly reports that we filed with Albany show the cost of the program or just the revenues and that's they do show the cost. I've got the grant coordinator here with me who's been talking to all.
Right, well, I'll make this request going forward for next month. We would like to see those, you know, and the reason I'm asking is the original deal was these grants are gonna pay for everything.
Right.
Right.
We'll scan all the reports and send them out, the fiscal and the quarterly report.
Anybody else have any more questions on Mr. Littleman's sheet with corrections?
I think everybody got, Ms. Sinclair did,
I did do, based on our discussions, I did do a sheet which I, think might be a little clearer. If you want to look at it, I can walk you through it. The very top part says, the correct part salary error already passed by the legislature. If you were to look at your list of housekeeping changes, that would be on, that's already been passed. That was to correct our salary error from 196 to 174, and then the accompanying benefits. And you can line those numbers up with, the 259, you can line that up with the DA's expense. So the salary expense that you find in your tentative budget for, under the tentative budget line is 259, so that ties out. So then that shows then the reduction in the expense, which was just one-sided because it was an error, it wasn't change in revenue. So that netted out to a total cost of 230,000. And then below, you see a proposed changes. And what it shows is then in the left column now is the previous total. It ties to the ending, the new total above, 230,546. shows the corrections, 31,000, moving one half of the DA's investigator out of the CARP salaries line and the associated benefits. And then moved over to, below, shows it being added into the DA salaries. And I put in the entire section just to make it easier to tie to the printed budget that you have in front of you. So you're taking $39,636 out of the CARP salaries line altogether and putting it into the DA salaries, $39,636, which brings his new salary line under 1165, $1,033,636. And then because he was anticipating revenue for 2016 of $215,000, he said to reduce the contractual expenses to conform to that. So that called for a $799 reduction of the conference fees. So you see that the total there is $215,000, and below says correction to CARP revenues, DA's estimate of grant revenue to be awarded November 16th for DA. You see that, and I combined, my understanding was that all the revenue is going to be CARP grants, so I negated the state aid line and moved it all up so that the revenue shows $215,000. You may find that easier to follow.
Mr. Bevan?
To clarify here, I understand the district attorney's, suggestion that the grant's gonna be for $215,000, it's gonna be voucher next year for $215, gonna receive $215. However, I don't understand how you can take, or 16 rather, I think it's an error to take $100,000 from 2015 and include that toward the reimbursement. That's, as I read this, you have 100,000 from the, previous total. From the previous total would be the revenue to be awarded November 16th, which is 2015 activity. That 2015 activity is for activity this year, not next year.
Well, yeah, I suppose it would be reimbursed, that's what he would be able to be reimbursed.
Now, we've had expenses, my question is this, as I read this, we've had expenses this year of $151,000. We have not received $151,000 of reimbursement.
Correct.
But we should get the balance of that on November 16th. That's this year. That does not, that does not.
The balance of the 151.
The balance
My
that is
understanding
vouchered.
is that the award, in other words, what they know they will have available to them in 2016 is what is happening on November the 16th. Now, if I've misunderstood that, then maybe you can correct that.
You're correct, we're expecting to hear that they're awarding the
Okay,
grant
I misunderstood.
on November 16th.
My question still then remains though, the $100,000 listed there is what?
That was somebody, when they did the, when they entered their numbers for 2016, but that's what's under the Department of Health, anticipated for reasons that I'm not sure of. They put in $100,000 as CARP grant and $51,156. It was like they broke the numbers apart, as state aid, which, isn't entirely accurate because it's the CARP grant. So if you're going to have meaningful accounts, then it should be under the CARP grant. That's what that's about. And so I moved, in essence, the 51,156, I kind of zeroed that out and put in, so that it came to 215 in the CARP grant line, because my understanding was that was where it would come from.
So the 100 and the 115 are just what? One number?
Just to bring the right amounts to the final total.
Fine, okay, so
You're
it's
not
just
getting any
adjusting,
state aid,
you
but
just
you are
adjusted.
getting $215,000 in CARP grant, assuming that that's what the award is on November the 16th.
Okay. My other question, if I may, is the 30,000, I don't know if someone knows this or not, but there's 31,000, I think is the number, reimbursed from DSS. Now, we've historically gotten state aid for that, I believe. Do we still get state aid for that?
The county is reimbursed a large portion, 70% of it, thereabouts of that.
So we still receive that one?
That's some DSS, gets those funds from the state, part of their expenditure to carry out their responsibility.
Okay. And my final question, then believe it or not, I won't ask it again. My final question is my understanding is that because this is a legal proceeding, that we're paying for the legal representation through our program of representation of indigent population. Is that accounted for here well, I can see it's not accounted for here somewhere. How much is that? Because my question with that is this: if we handle these administratively, and understand the advantages not to do so, but the big advantage, if we handle these administratively, we don't pay for indigent legal defense. So that's a cost of the grant that needs to be included in this process, because it's coming out of the pockets of our taxpayers.
Yeah, I don't have any numbers for the percentage that, I don't know if Lloyd does, he's nodding his head, so he may. What this includes is, and you say administrative, there's two types of, there's one that's purely administrative where our office is not involved.
Right.
And then there's what's called a disqualification consent agreement, where there's no criminal charges filed, because under the threat that we will arrest them if they don't pay it, they agreed to voluntarily disqualify themselves from benefits and pay the restitution for overpayment back. We've done 67 of those this year. So that is, those 67 haven't cost anything. Of the 100 and, I want to say maybe 130, the metrics, about 130 criminal cases that were brought forward. I don't know if Lloyd has a number that assigned counsel picked up.
19,000.
19,000.
Is that the total number, or just from?
That's from the sweep of September of
But
2012.
there are 130 cases that have gone to court? More or less, I mean.
I emailed you the metric sheet, which does show the list of cases that were actually prosecuted. There were 100 and, let's see. We opened up 203 investigations, which resulted in 170 cases. 103 were recommended for prosecution and prosecuted. 68 were not. 67 of those were DCAs, the disqualification consent agreement. One was an actual disqualification. And those resulted in approximately 140,000 restitution collected, about 807,000 disqualification obtained, and about 41,000 restitution ordered that hasn't been collected yet.
So the average, just a ballpark, of cost for indigent defense for this kind of proceeding would be what, about $2,000, $2,500 probably?
Not all of the cases resulted in assigned counsel, so.
Of that last sweep, in September of 2012, I think there was 31 that were picked up, and I think assigned counsel paid for 27 of those, which cost about 19,000.
So out of 27, we can figure that, so that cost us somewhere around 55 or 60,000, probably using those percentages.
Well, if you carried it out all
Right.
the way.
Right, okay. Thank you.
How's that, Mr. Bazari?
So most of the revenue from the department going to the district attorney's budget in 2016 is going to be related to their review and their help with disqualification agreements. They don't result in prosecution, and they don't have any assigned counsel fees.
Great, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Mr. Bennett?
Yes, back on page 136 there, number A, 11694-54067, conference fees. I see the district attorney asked for 2540, why are we at 7880?
What page?
Page 136,
It reduced them.
contractual.
It reduced them to 2,500.
In the grant application that we set in.
CES fairway. And Suzanne bumped it up to 78.
I think that's a number from 15's grant applications that was carried over. I think it's higher in 16. question, I don't know.
Anyone else? Mr. Foley?
Yeah, we said about 19, that's, about 19,000 across the Senate Council. Do you know what the dollar amount or a rough estimate of the amount of local share we will get from that 140,000 you were discussing?
I do not know, that would be something to be up to DSS. What I would point out is this year, this program generated a surplus of over 36,000, which is on my sheet. Next year, it's not gonna generate as big a surplus, but if you divide that in half, that's 18,000 each year.
I'd like to make a motion that utilizing the sheet the district attorney has provided, along with the sheet the administrator has provided, that these adjustments be made within the district attorney's budget.
Second.
There's a second. Any discussion? There, Mr. Farrell.
Lynn, have you had an opportunity to digest it?
Yeah, I mean, basically, the adjustment that you're gonna try and pass is increasing his revenue by 63,844 and decreasing one expense account by 799. And that's the net of what you're passing, and it's based on the application he just submitted.
So I guess what I'm saying is the money gonna be there, or we
I
don't?
have no idea.
It'll depend on you. You might want to put that particular thing off until after the 16th, if you're going to pass the budget prior to that time. Because that's when the award is supposed to be made, so that you know what the grant for 2016 is. If it's less than 215,000, you could make an adjustment at that time. If it's more, you know, then you could, but it's probably not gonna be more since 215 is what they asked.
So Lynn, for 2015, where are we? Are we making money, breaking even, losing money, where are we?
I mean, for 2015, the one thing that's different, I mean, in here is a budget of $60,000 in DSS revenue, we're not paying that anymore. We're really prohibited from paying for prosecutions that are covered by the CARP grant. So, you know, I don't know, whatever they're able to voucher, and part of the complication is this, is that his grant is on a state fiscal year, and this is on a calendar year, so a lot of things are never gonna quite jive. You know, a lot of our grants are like in the health department, you get them April 1st, you know, so you get awarded a couple months ahead of time, and, you know, and whether his other grant can continue to be spent, if there's unspent monies, sometimes they allow that also, and they don't, you just make you cut it off, and I don't know.
I could trust that.
If there'd be more comfort, I'd be happy to withdraw my motion until, you know, our next special meeting, either the budget hearing, on the 18th, or, till the full ledge, to make adjustments.
That'd be great.
Mark?
We're basing it on the information we don't have yet.
I would, if I could just correct one thing.
What, hang on. Did you have something else, Mark?
No.
Mr. Foley?
It's just pending him receiving a $215,000 grant. I mean, you can amend your, resolution or to say it's pending as long as he gets the grant. If he doesn't get the grant, then obviously we can't do the budget like this.
If that was the case, there'd be no harm in waiting, and then there would be no need for, changes, right?
Well, there's still corrections that need to be done. The grant year next year is January.
Mr. Bodelman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The grant year next year on this grant is January 1. I sent that out to all of you with the RFP. It's January 1 to December 31st for this grant next year. So the grants we have this year will spend down by the end of this year, and then as of January 1 next year, this grant should be in place. What I would ask, and it's up to you, since we've had the discussion, got on, I would ask that it be voted. If it comes in less than that, we can then amend the lines again, but there's some corrections that need to be made in here anyway to the budget that aren't accurate.
I'll ask the body to give an indication just by raising hands. Would you prefer and have a little more comfort if we waited till after the 16th to see what the numbers are?
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay.
So we're waited?
I'll withdraw my motion. Anything else from the district attorney? If not, Let's move right along. Emergency services. Anybody got any concerns or questions about emergency services? Okay. How about the coroner's office? The public defender's office? Everybody's good. Probation. Mr. Farrell.
Kelly, could you just explain, what is the expenditure and probation line for pretrial?
Lynn, can you help me out on that, to be more specific? That was the contract that we moved, there used to be legislative contracts, up in like 10 and 14, and we moved them into probation, just so that there'd be more of a department kind of watching the contracts and monitoring it. Lloyd could probably give a better explanation of what that, probation was, right?
That would probably include, we deal with juvenile delinquents and that probably includes that will include our contract, with Cayuga Counseling Services. Because we do the general intake as we're the designee. But then because probation is so stretched, and has been for so many years, we contract out, executive intake to the counseling services, works with these kids, they're assigned a counselor, a case manager, who works on, with them on a more intense level than probation can provide.
Anyone else? Mr. Foley.
I think it might be worth looking into, not tonight, but, it's something that needs to be found, some monies for, but possibly adding a body to the probation department, even if it's part-time. We've heard for a couple of years now that they are stretched extremely thin. You know, it's something, sometimes these things are necessary, like we heard the other night from, the Veterans Office, Larry Wilt. They are adding a part-time person that we approved. It is something I think should be possibly looked into, and we'll be working with Suzanne, to find some monies for that. But, yes, I just wanted to say that, so it's on people's minds.
Okay, thank you. Any of the department heads that, with departments I mentioned, have any comments, anything they wanna add before I go to the next one? Brian?
I just have the one department that's not mentioned is EMS.
You have anything?
No.
Okay. I don't think anyone else is. I think you guys are good.
Emergency services, but EMS is separate. It's under, for some reason, it's still under the Health and Human Services.
Okay, noted. How about 911? No questions on the 911. Okay. I think we're good then. We can move over to Health and Human Services. We can talk about the Health Department first. Does anybody have any questions, concerns about the Health Department? Kathleen's been studying now for 2 days.
Very intensely at
Do you have anything you would like to offer, Kathleen?
No, I think that our budget's very straightforward and, you know, fortunately, you're very forthright with our community, so if anything is anticipated, it's pretty straightforward and have our best on the board, so it should be fairly black and white.
Okay, thank you. Mental health?
Wait, whoa, may I ask?
Yes, sir.
There was a large increase in the education for physically disabled. I know it's a mandated program. Is there any revenue associated with that, or is that one of the things that we simply pay all of?
There's some, and I've got some notes on it. Bill does have better history, so I look for her knowledge on it. It's a percentage of revenue that it's a really, yeah, I mean, we had a budget reduction in our expenses, actually, what it is. It's not been a change in the percentage or anything. We just, you know, we have to estimate that revenue at the end of the year with the rules, because we only let claims the revenue so often, and historically it's decreased so well, we decreased it. So it is mandated program guideline is 59.5% reimbursed by the state.
What percent, I'm sorry?
What?
What percent reimbursement?
59.5, by state education department,
Yep, okay, thank you.
so, you know, it's an estimate.
Mr. Runkle?
We're still talking health.
Yeah.
Yes.
Page 221, revenue. The biggest item there, just listed as public health. Last year was 873,000. This we budgeted 1.25. What caused, is there any rough idea what caused that revenue to jump up like that?
Yeah, let me explain that. What happens there, okay, is we have a lot of grants, as you know, in the health department, and a lot of staff get reimbursed from that. We budget everybody's full staff and fringe benefits and salaries right here on page 221. So what you see historically also is we're always under budget in salary and fringes, so we always are under budget in this revenue account. So we actually over budget the revenue, so we're not asking for a tax levy that we don't need. So historically, we kind of know the expenditures budgeted higher, the revenues budgeted higher, both actuals come in lower every year. And that's how we kind of do it, and that's how we keep raising taxes. And we
Okay, so it's an offset in a sense.
yes, I mean, both are basically over budget.
Onward and upward, page 223, our infamous pool program, of my beloved YMCA. It's in there for 21,000. What's the status on that?
You know, there really hasn't been any change since our last discussions about it. We can certainly touch base, Chris has been great to work with, so
Yeah,
we
he
can
is.
touch base with him again. I think he was really looking at a 3-year plan, trying to implement
Okay.
absorption of that based on our previous discussions.
I talked to him a couple months ago, and I know it's on his mind to work on with the board, so.
And
Okay.
we don't anticipate any number changes in that.
Fine.
Anyone else? If not,
I think so.
Mr. Fuller?
Going back to, page 221, then you have the 5,000 for, vacation buyout, line, 51008. Is that something that can possibly be, removed, or?
I wouldn't remove it, I mean, we spent $33,000 last year in that line. I mean, being a bigger department, even if people quit, you pay it, it's not just for people retiring. So, I mean, I think, you know, you can cut it out of the budget everywhere you want, but we're gonna pay it. You know, it's one of those things, because if you retire or you quit, your vacation accruals are paid to you.
I don't think we don't have the same number of retirements anticipated this year.
So it's
but
1.5.
There's a couple people who could go whenever they choose.
Anyone else? If not, mental health. Have anything, Ray?
The department generates enough revenue to pay for all of its expenses operationally. Some of the expenses were mandated costs to the county around family court evaluations and forensic placements, and some of the costs of legacy retiree health benefits, which I argue repeatedly doesn't belong in our budget. However, it's there, and that's fine. So I think we anticipate that we'll continue to run a surplus next year like we have the last 2 years.
Any questions on the subject of mental health for Mr. Runkle?
It's minor, but page 235, there's a gifts line in there that we evidently receive gifts, which is fantastic. Oh, it's grant money?
Yeah, the small grant was from Auburn City for food and similar with their treatment folks. We're doing some groups for the folks that are.
Okay.
Just like a gift. You thought maybe a box of chocolate or something?
Anyone else on mental
need
health?
sugar.
Okay, Office of the Aging. Nancy, you're still here. Do you have anything to offer? Anybody have any questions for Nancy? Pretty straightforward there. All righty.
Wait a minute. Slow down.
Joe knows.
It's not a big budget.
No, I know. Page 253. Where do the meals show up, Nancy?
They are in line 5420 on the
45 what?
That we have is $45,000.
345.
I don't know.
Page
I'm s-
256.
Oh, 256.
Okay. And you realistically think that's enough? Because, I mean, I know you're,
Well, I'll tell you what's happening this year, our numbers of meals being served are actually down, so we calculate it each month. And it fluctuates very much, and this year it seems like it's down. We do have to renegotiate the cost per meal with advanced meals, sometimes that's monthly. So, before you leave. So, we'll have a better idea then if we think we need to increase that line or not, but we really can't predict what at this point.
Mr. Foley?
Was that down though because, you didn't have, I know during this past year, we talked about you didn't have volunteers to get the meals, so you started cutting out meal days. Is that down because of that?
I don't think so, that's in the city. No, it's just overall, it just seems to be down. You know, they got the same number of meals, they get 2 meals on Monday and 2 meals on Wednesday. So it's the same number of meals. You know, it wasn't a reduction by the number of meals overall. We do track it at the time we looked at the budget, we thought we could justify increasing it at that time, increasing that line, so.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else for Office of the Aging? All right, moving right along. Youth Bureau. You have anything to spark us on? Any questions for Lloyd? Pretty straightforward there. Thank you, Lloyd. Last but not least, the social services. Anybody have anything to offer? Any questions?
Yeah.
Mr. Batman?
I'm just curious.
So I guess I would say,
There's a-
like, so there's areas in that budget that we can do something about controlling costs.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
We can't hear you.
There's areas in the budget where we can do stuff to control some of our costs. So we look at foster care, we look at, safety net hoteling, and we look at, so we look at those two things, because we think that we can influence them. A lot of the other costs that are embedded in it are things we don't have any control over, has a lot to do with how many people present, if you know what I mean, come in for services, for, SNAP benefits, for EAP, for, temporary assistance, and all that sort of stuff. So we figure we can pick up some big, well, the other areas in juvenile justice and foster care placement as well. So we think that, we're really very active and creative in doing that kind of work. We think that's kind of the only place that we can make an impact on that budget. So that's just a little framework for you in terms of, sort of how we approach kind of managing some pretty big numbers.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Mr. Batman again.
Yeah, well, I actually have a question, not and I'm trying to see if there's because it's on another sheet I have, and I don't see if there's a line. There should be a line, though. I think it's, sorry. I had it here, and then Ray did that, and it was so captivating that I looked up and lost my place.
You'll have other
It's
opportunities.
DSS administration, here it is. Is there a line 6010? I can't find it in the book, but the expenditure went up substantially. I'm just curious what that line is. It went from
The
one.
6010 is our whole administration, so is it a contractual account that you're looking at?
What page is it on that I can take?
Well, it's on pages 262, 263, 264.
Okay, no, what I'm looking at is the balance. The total in that line, the expenditures in the total in 6010 went from 1.8 to 2.3 million, like 26%, $472,000. I'm just curious what that in total is. I'm not suggesting it cuts, it's a informational question.
I mean, you have to look at everything, right, so in that page 261, the revenue.
I'm sorry, Lynn, I apologize, I can't.
Professional
Yeah,
services.
you have to, it's the whole entire
70 grand.
administration, so starting on page
130 grand.
261, where the revenue accounts are, they decrease, and that's based historically on what we're getting, you know, if our spending goes down, that's gonna drop. You know, the salaries have gone up, there were raises to the union, and almost everybody in this is a union member. Health insurance went up.
Lynn, there's a professional services
Right, that's up 12%.
that went up, 130 grand, 120 grand, from 239 in 2014
Yeah.
to 360 in the proposed budget, 300 this year. Any idea on those rates?
Yeah, they have the detail, their contracts that we have.
So part of how we manage, we use contract providers for a lot of the services that the departments can't provide. So we've added some contracts for 2016 related to increasing case management for the homeless, to move them out of the emergency shelters. It cost us a ton of money, try to move them more efficiently and quickly into permanent housing.
Yep.
Also we're building some capacity around, there's things that we can do with families to prevent them from entering into foster care or more expensive residential placements. So we think we can make targeted investments in some of those areas. This money's typically reimbursed 62% by the state, so the local share is a little bit different. So we use those contract providers to behave in a way that we're not able to behave, nights, weekends,
Right.
stuff like that.
Right. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, just a little recap. So with the changes we made tonight, where are we as far as the tax cap levy and dollars from the general fund?
Your levy would be a 1.25% increase, correct? And then the use of the fund balance would be 1.527, so 1,527,000.
Nice
So
job.
we're at 125?
What?
Is that what you
Yeah.
said?
The tax levy would be an increase of 1.25.
We're there.
That was, because that was the motion made at the beginning, so I'm making it balance, right?
By using the fund.
By
Okay.
using the fund balance. We've
Okay.
increased the fund balance.
1.527, what is that?
1.527 million. Fund balance,
All right.
1.5.
And the homework's not done yet. We gotta get some new numbers from the administrator. Then we're gonna have the budget hearing on the 18th of November. So there's time in between to do some more research, come up with questions. Mr. Bath?
I would like to make a motion that we restore at least
the day after the
50%,
budget,
so
yes.
$75,000 of the money that was set aside for equity, the salary adjustments for our non-bargaining staff, and to be taken from the fund balance. Do you remember
Did you say
150,000?
75,000?
Yeah, 150,000 was cut, and I'm suggesting we
Yeah.
restore half of it.
And do we have a cost analysis, Ms. Sinclair, Mr. Russell, as to what that could work out to be?
Are you referring to the 1.5 or the grid?
No.
The grid, yeah, well, an equity adjustment, I don't consider it the grid.
I believe that's in there.
No, it was removed.
No, I removed 150, which I was advised was in there for grid.
Right.
Okay? And I believe there was around 190 total was the original number. The other money for raises is in there.
I understand that.
Right.
I think we need to move to, what we've got in here right now is across-the-board increases. We need to begin to make progress with these equity adjustments. And so I'm suggesting that we put at least, it may not cover them all, but we need to put something in there so that we have something to work with.
I think you would have been happy with what occurred last night at Ways and Means.
I had another meeting, but my motion is, if I don't get
We have
second, I don't.
information coming forth relative to the grid. Cost analysis has been asked for. That's gonna be addressed at a special legislative meeting on November the 19th.
I move that we put $75,000 tonight.
Is there a
into
second
the-
for Mr. Batman's motion?
I'll second it for discussion.
Mr. Foley seconds. Any discussion on that? Mr. Whitman?
The motion is to pay for salary increases with fund balance?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Mahonik?
I think it would be premature to put a number on there until that meeting on the 19th, where we are gonna address all those issues and have that discussion. I think at this time, to put any number in there is not gonna be accurate, because we're gonna look at every single, all 30 whatever positions, on that evening, and come up with a concrete number that we can all live with, and then adjust salaries accordingly. That was the intent of the meeting on the 19th.
Anyone else? If not, Madam Clerk?
Yeah. Plus,
Papers left.
Mr. Didio, did you have a question?
no, you're, no.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Okay, motion to increase, for salary increase 75,000 to come out of the fund balance
Is that right, Mr. Batman?
for equity.
75?
Yeah, just
Tuck-
get something in there.
No.
Ben Vitale,
No.
Mark Farrell, Paul Pickney,
No.
Joseph Runkel,
No.
Keith Batman,
Yes.
Hans Petrus excused, Terry Baxter,
No.
Joseph
No.
Bennett, Frank Reginelli,
No.
Patrick Mahonik,
No.
Tim Latimer is excused, Michael Didio,
No.
Ryan Foley,
I know the feeling.
Michael Chapman,
No.
defeated.
That is
Is this a
defeated.
record, by the way?
Pardon me?
Is this a record?
For you? No,
Tucker
we're
gets
still
that all the
working on a
time.
record for you, but I would like to.
Could I change my vote?
No, I have one more motion I'd like to bring up. I advised you earlier I was gonna bring it up again, and that is to establish a date for a public hearing to override the tax levy limit. I would ask if there's a second.
Second.
There's a second. Any discussion on this? Mr. Didio?
In that request for that, for that motion, you mentioned something about the, tobacco assets.
And that's a different matter. I'm glad you reminded me of that. This motion right now is for setting a public hearing. Is there any other discussion? If not, Madam Clerk? Well, it's gotta be appropriate to today if it passes. Mr. Foley?
I don't see a need to go to the tax cap given our current situation. I mean, we are staying under 1.25 now, and I think that we have to see what else comes about before we go over, we see a need to go over the tax cap.
Very good, thanks. Mr. Baxter?
Yes, I think where we are in the budget right now, we're already utilizing 1.5 million of the fund balance. When we finish up, we're gonna be using more of the fund balance if we don't at least consider raising the tax cap. Once again, this is just a topic for discussion with the public, to give us the right to do it if we need to. It's a tool we should have.
Right. Mr. Mahonik?
Yeah, just going along with what Terry said, there's potential that when we start playing with the budget, we always add more in. We do have the salaries that we have to look at. I would hate to be in a position where we are cutting positions because we did not have this public hearing. And again, it's not to exceed the tax cap, it's just to let the public have their say. Do they wanna cut services and potentially cut services or positions in order to stay under the tax cap, or are they willing to, it's just an opportunity for them to voice their opinion, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Anyone else? If not, Madam Clerk?
Okay, this is to set the public hearing. Tucker
Yes.
Whitman,
Yes.
Benjamin Vitale,
Yes.
Mark Farrell,
Yes.
Paul Pickney,
Yes.
Joseph Runkel,
No.
Keith Batman,
Yeah.
Hans Petrus excused, Terry Baxter,
Yes.
Joseph Bennett,
Yes.
Frank Reginelli,
Yes.
Patrick Mahonik,
Yes.
Tim Lattimore is excused, Michael Didio,
No.
Ryan Foley,
No.
Michael Chapman.
Yes.
Pass.
That
Passed.
has passed, so I will be sending out the date in accordance with our legal requirement. Thank you, Mr. Didio, for bringing up tobacco assets. What I did do, over the last 24 hours is I wrote to my colleagues on the Tobacco Asset Securitization Board and, spoke with Fred and learned there is a $130 balance in there. Based on legal counsel, we're advised to keep double what our expenses amount to, which would lead us to asking the removal of $30,000 and give that to the Veterans Department towards the purchase of a van. So therefore, there'd be no pressure on the budget. It's a great use of dollars, and it continues a great service. Mr. Didio?
Yes, am I correct in stating that it's not 130, not 130,000? The
130,000.
actual value is roughly 50,000?
The account as of December 31st of 2014 had 130,000 in it. The expenses have been running between 30 and 32,000. As the chairman indicated, council's recommending having 1 or 2 times that, so there appears to be a sufficient cushion in that account.
Right.
To cover the $30,000
Right.
proposed.
We're covered anyway.
Right.
Mr. Babin?
And I apologize for my ignorance on this. That money comes from where?
That comes from a settlement of tobacco
Oh, that's
smoking
the
and
old
Medicaid money.
tobacco.
Old tobacco.
That's the old tobacco, way old.
Old tobacco.
Being from Kentucky, I don't know if you heard this news bulletin, but there are state representatives down there that are now encouraging all the residents in Kentucky to start
smoke.
smoking again to
Well,
improve
you can't even
economic
smoke in
conditions.
public places there anymore. It's
Well,
terrible.
You know,
It's terrible.
Little info I thought you should know. Is there a motion to adjourn? Unless anybody else got any more business? All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you very much. Thanks to everybody who came in. Thanks
There's
for
some
the
cold
patience.
pizza and soft drinks out there on the table.